Hi, everybody. Welcome. I'm just going to give us a minute to kind of let folks trickle in a little bit, and we will get started in just a moment. Right, so welcome everyone to today's webinar. My name is Marissa Levette. I'm the Assistant Staff Counsel with the ABA Center for Pro Bono, and welcome to today's webinar on Pro Bono Best Practices. And this is a joint program of the ABA Commission on Immigration and the Standing Committee on Pro Bono and Public Service and the Center for Pro Bono. Today's topic is going to be on mentorship best practices. We'll be hearing from 3 different programs about their models of pro bono mentoring and hearing from them about how to develop those programs and ideas for best practices when you're developing a mentoring program and running a mentoring program. Just a few things before we get started. We are in webinar format, so if you do have questions, please go ahead and place those in the Q&A section. I will try to get to those questions as we are in the midst of the webinar. Usually I try to kind of just ask those questions throughout, especially if they are around the same topic that we're discussing. And we will also try to leave a little bit of time at the end for questions. So please just go ahead and put those in the Q&A section. With that, I am going to go ahead and have our panelists introduce themselves, and we will go ahead and get started. So if I will start with Courtney Smith, and just go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your program and your general pro bono program.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me here today. My name is Courtney Smith. I'm with the Veterans Consortium Pro Bono Program. I'm the Senior Director of the U.S. Court of Appeals for Veterans Claims Practice Group. That is our main line of service, and that is where we assist veterans who've received final denials from the Department of Veterans Appeals in their disability compensation benefits. And they've exercised their right to appeal to the next level and seek judicial review of those decisions at the U.S. Court of Appeals for Veterans Claims. Our organization also handles discharge upgrades, especially those as they relate to mental health conditions, specifically PTSD or MST, mental health issues due to MST experiences. We do also assist with some LGBTQ plus issues as well within the discharge upgrade realm. We have a Women's Veterans Legal Assistance Program where we focus on the unique legal needs and issues that women veterans face today. And then we also have a Veterans Naturalization Assistance Program where we help non-citizen veterans so those are non-citizens who've served in the U.S. military, seek naturalization. There's a different path for them. Glad to be here today to talk a little bit more about our professional mentorship program, and thank you for having me.
Great, thanks, Courtney. I'll go ahead and pass it to Lauren.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am happy to be with you all here today. I am Lauren Gilbride. I'm the managing attorney of the intake group and the volunteer lawyers program at the Legal Aid Society of Cleveland. So we are a legal services organization. We cover most of Northeast Ohio, Cleveland being where our main office is, but we also have offices throughout Northeast Ohio. We do a little bit of everything at the Legal Aid Society of Cleveland. Housing, mostly eviction work, family law, representing domestic violence survivors, consumer law, and along with consumer law, we have a bankruptcy practice, a low-income taxpayer clinic, a big expungement and other work-related issue practice. And then we also do public benefits, education, and immigration. And that's the work that the attorneys at our organization do, but it's also the work that we engage our volunteers in as well. So our volunteers really touch all of our practice groups, and then some. We engage with volunteers in very traditional one-to-one matching of clients and volunteers for case placement, and then do a variety of different clinic models, virtual clinics, in-person advice clinics, pro se assistance clinics, in many of the areas that our organization covers. It's nice to meet you all.
Great. And Claude.
Good afternoon or good morning, depending on which time zone you're zooming in from today. I'm Claude Nelson. I'm the Director of Pro Bono Services for Community Legal Services of Mid-Florida. We don't always use the Mid-Florida aspect, so you might hear me refer to us as Community Legal Services or CLS. We are an LSC program that covers 12 counties in the Central Florida area. Just to give you an idea of volume, in 2022, we closed nearly 10,000 cases and served more than 8,600 clients. Our firm assists indigent and vulnerable populations in civil matters across an array, many or all of which Lauren described, so I won't run through that list. And then our pro bono program supports volunteers at various levels, and but primarily volunteer attorneys to support clients among other areas of law, but primarily in bankruptcy, housing, family law, estate planning and advanced directives, and employment law issues. We provide every level of service depending on what our volunteers are willing and able to provide. And so that might be a pro se clinic, or it might be a forms clinic, or it might be helping prepare estate planning documents, preparing for hearings, or full representation, and everything in between. So it's a little bit about who we are and what we do. And I fear if I say any more, I'm gonna get ahead of Marissa. So I'll stop there.
That's okay. So thanks everyone. Thanks Lauren, Courtney, and Claude for being with us today. So I'll go ahead and start with our first topic. Could you tell us about the overall structure of how you are involving mentors in your programs? And Claude, I'll go ahead and start with you because I think you were going to start talking about it anyways. So,
all right. So we have a couple of different models that we utilize. I'll briefly kind of just state what they are and then focus on the primary model that we're working with right now. We mentor our volunteers and law students with our staff attorneys. Our staff attorneys are the mentors, and our pro bono volunteers are our mentors. That might be a one-off mentorship between a staff attorney and a volunteer, or a law student, or it could be a more comprehensive engagement between them. But what I'm really going to be talking about is our Peer Academy program, and how we use mentors and how mentors drive our ability to serve more clients and provide support to more of our volunteers. Our Peer Academy is a comprehensive training and mentorship model that supports volunteer lawyers who are new to an area of law and prepares them to be able to not only take cases from us in that area of law, but could be able to also take paying clients in that area of law. Currently, we have modules built out in our Peer Academy in the substantive areas of bankruptcy, dissolution of marriage, and estate planning and probate. And our plan is to continue to run the existing models that are built and build new models in substantive areas that are meeting emerging need. So I don't think it's a surprise to probably anybody on this call that family law is the #1 area that in our firm we need help with, and within my pro bono unit. And so it was really important to us to develop a program that allowed volunteers to feel comfortable taking family law cases, and mentorship was a key component of that. In the program, each participant receives a mentor, about 12 hours of CLE accredited training, model forms and pleadings, access to other professionals, and a bunch of other stuff I won't talk about, right here because it's not relevant, but in return, our participants agree to take 2 brief or limited services cases to help our clients with. That might be a clinic, or it might be helping to draft an estate plan, and 1 full representation matter in that area of law of the module. And that's where our mentors come in, right? If you're new to an area of law, how could you take a case? Well, we're going to train you, but we're also going to offer you a mentor. And it's not, we offer mentors on all of our cases. Not everybody takes us up on it. Peer Academy is a little bit different. It's not an offer, it's a requirement of the program. So everybody gets a mentor, whether or not they think they need one. And we have found that that's been a really helpful tool in engaging with our mentors and our participants in the program. And then that experiential learning model allows us to serve more clients, allows our participants to really engage with the learning that they're receiving through the CLEs that they have, and they have the support of our mentors to be able to answer questions that they have, review documents before they're filed with the court, and kind of run through anything that's needed with the cases. Each of our modules run for 6 months. We have live monthly meetings during each of the 6 months of each module. And at those meetings, our participants can ask questions about the training. They can staff their cases, and it also gives them another opportunity to meet with not just their mentor, but the other mentors that are in the program. Yeah, and then each academy is only limited by the number of mentors we have. So of course, the more we build our mentors into the program, the more participants we're able to serve, and the more clients we're able to serve. I think I'll stop there.
We had a quick question come in that I'm just going to go ahead and go to. This person's asking if you require your pro bono attorneys to watch CLE videos?
Yeah, so in the Peer Academy, we have those 12 hours of CLE. They are pre-recorded by many of our mentors and other expert pro bono attorneys or staff attorneys in that area of law. And we do require that they watch them. We use an e-learning platform. I think we'll talk about that a little bit further on in the conversation, to be able to track, to provide that programming and then track to make sure that our participants are actually completing it. And we offer it as well to our mentors, although we do not require our mentors to go through all of that training, but it is available to them so they can see it.
Great. All right, let's go. Lauren, why don't you tell us a little bit about your mentorship setup at Legal Aid Society?
Sure. So very similar to Claude, you know, when we are asking volunteers to take cases, we are offering mentorship to those volunteers. And I'm going to talk about 2 different tracks that we use for mentorship. The first is by using attorneys that work for our organization. So in-house attorneys who work on these cases every day. That has long been a model that we have used for mentorship. So for example, if someone's taking an eviction case and they need, you know, mentorship, follow-up, you know, just to bounce some ideas off of someone, we will often connect them with an attorney that works at the Legal Aid Society on eviction cases all of the time. So that has been our primary form of mentorship offered to volunteer attorneys for many, many years. And, you know, that has been successful in a lot of ways. I think that it is a really great way to engage your in-house staff in working with volunteers. I think a lot of people on this, I'm going to guess, I would agree that sometimes getting buy-in from people that work on cases and not necessarily with volunteers very frequently, you know, it's a bit of a struggle sometimes to get them engaged at that volunteer level. And this has been an opportunity for us to bring our staff in and have them buy into the pro bono program, have them understand that the pro bono attorneys are doing good work, important work, and want to help clients just like the attorneys that work at our organization do. So that has been, you know, tried and true method for us when we're looking for mentorship. But there are many reasons why we have wanted to engage volunteer attorneys in the mentorship aspect. Claude was highlighting some of those reasons. We've had many volunteers who have said to us, we're interested in volunteering, but we don't really want to take cases. We'd like to serve as mentors. And we've had, on the flip side, volunteers say to us, we're really interested in these cases, but we can't take on this work and we need a lot of mentorship, more so than really we can ask our staff attorneys to give when they're spending time, on their individual caseload. And so we have used volunteers over the years to serve as mentors, but we really ramped that up when we created, and I'm saying I don't want to take any credit for this. There was a program, I worked on it, but I was not the creator of it. In 2015, we created a retired attorney pro bono program. It's called Act 2. And that was the program where we really identified this is a key group of people that we want to ask to serve as mentors to volunteers. They have a ton of experience. It might not be experience in the areas in which we're practicing, but, a litigator is a litigator and can give some pretty good mentorship to someone that's willing to take on a landlord tenant case, as long as we're providing that substantive training to everyone. So really wanted to tap into that retired attorney group, get them involved and have them serve as mentors. And so we've been able to do that now in a variety of ways. One of the most important ways that we've been able to do that is we have several Act 2 attorneys who have agreed to serve as we call them in-house volunteers. It really just means that they're volunteering about 10 hours a week in a substantive area, and they're developing their own substantive expertise. And along with that, they've agreed to serve as mentors. So for example, we have an attorney who spends a significant amount of time working on our expungement cases, and then serves as a mentor to volunteers who are taking that expungement work. And in addition to serving as mentors, they're also serving as trainers. So I know there was that Q&A question that came in about requiring people to watch CLE videos. We ask those volunteers to participate in those CLE trainings, either to do the actual training or at least to provide, some sort of information about the program and participation with us. We think it's important for others in the community who are interested in volunteering to hear from our actual volunteers about their experience. Listening to me talk about it is not as compelling sometimes as listening to someone who's doing the work and who can tell them what the experience is really like as someone that's not employed by the Legal Aid Society. So the Act 2 program has really jump-started a lot of our mentorship work, and engaged a really specific group of attorneys in that mentorship role.
Thanks, Lauren. Okay, now we're going to go to Courtney and hear about how you all at Veterans Consortium have structured your mentorship.
Oh, great. Thank you. So we have a belief statement at the consortium that says we believe that our veterans, our nation's defenders, deserve the care, benefits, and compensation they were promised, and the best legal services free of charge to meet their challenges. And in looking at that belief statement, something that pops out to us is best legal services. And our volunteers are really key to that. And so in order to provide that first-class support that they need to be successful and provide those best legal services, our professional mentoring program is key to that. Indeed, it was actually contemplated as part of our structure when our organization was created. So for every case that we assign out, we assign a mentor attorney. TVC notifies the volunteer, and this of course is after they've taken the training. So we have a required 3-hour training for our volunteers to take, and then they're eligible to take on a case from there. For all of those cases, we assign a mentor attorney. And in the case assignment email, the case placement email, we notify our volunteer about who that mentor attorney is. And the mentor is also copied on that email. So from the case placement email, everything that we send to our volunteers, our mentor also gets. So that will include the screening memos, any case pleadings, the record before the agency, everything that has been docketed on the case thus far is sent to both the volunteer and the mentor attorney as well. The mentors, they take on a great commitment, and they get this case placement email, they download all of the documents, and then within 2 business days, they're reaching out to the volunteer. They're making the initial contact to introduce themselves. They thank them for volunteering with TVC, let them know that they're available for any questions that they may have. But just by way of introduction to get their foot into the door, they also talk about an introductory meeting where it's not anything we're talking about the case just yet, right? Nothing too scary because our volunteer hasn't yet become acquainted with it, but they are offering to sit down and meet with them to talk about to answer any questions about court practice and procedure, maybe some substantive law here or there, depending on how far they get, how to use the resource materials that TVC does send to our volunteer attorneys, and any other issues related to the case. They're available to discuss litigation strategy, review any of the draft pleadings, and also help them through or providing guidance on how to review the record before the agency for us, which is like all the evidence that VA had before it at the time that they made a decision in the case. So that big record can be somewhat intimidating for someone who's new to the practice area. So our mentors are reaching out, doing that first contact to help them get started in that area. And then from there, they're available to review any substantive pleadings, such as mediation memorandums or briefs, reply briefs, any motions that are going to be submitted. Our mentors are available to do that as well. We are very specific and indicate that or delineate what our mentors can do, but we're also very specific about what they cannot do, right? So when we place a case with our volunteers, we want them to take the responsibility, take the onus of the case. So as far as our mentors are concerned, we do not expect them to answer questions or do work that are not related to cases outside of TVC. Where we don't want them to do any of the legal research or draft any of the motions or pleadings on the volunteer's behalf, or file any documents or communicate with the appellant. That is for our volunteer to do. We have about 20 to 21 mentors that handle, quite frankly, between 600 to 700 cases dispersed amongst all of us throughout the year. I cannot speak any more highly of my mentors than I can. They are amazing. They are great. And they're practitioners themselves. So these are veterans law practitioners who are doing this day in and day out, and then taking the time to invest into our volunteer attorneys so that they have a good pro bono experience as well, because then that translates into a successful pro bono client engagement, as well as successful case outcomes as well. So that is how our mentorship program is structured. We have replicated it, and we're looking at growing it in our other lines of in our other areas of service too. So our CAVC practice is the main one, and we have since started to replicate it in our discharge upgrade practice, as well as our Veterans Naturalization Assistance Program as well. So I know that the ABA Commission on Immigration is here. So if you are wanting to be a mentor for the Veterans Naturalization Systems Program, we would love to have you. But we are truly appreciative of what all of our mentors do for our cases and for our veterans and our pro bono volunteers.
Thanks, Courtney. So, Courtney, I know you talked a little bit about this, but for everyone, what would you say? So how often do your mentors meet and when are they available? And what would you say is the general time commitment for the mentor attorneys?
So generally, the time commitment can range between 10 to 20 hours, depending on the complexity of the case. If it's a single issue case, no more than probably 10 hours. But if there's multiple issues, the time commitment will get longer. So the mentors do the initial contact to reaching out to the volunteer, but the onus is on our volunteer attorneys to continue to reach out to the mentor attorney as they need help. Now, we do at TVC informally encourage our pro bono attorneys to utilize their mentors. We send out reminder emails for every stage of the case. So if there's a mediation memorandum that's due, or if that's a brief that's coming due, or a reply brief, we'll send out a reminder email, which includes the mentor attorney who's also CC'd, encouraging to send a draft of those pleadings to their mentor at least 1 to 2 weeks in advance. So that gives the mentor enough time to do a substantive review of the actual pleading before they submit it.
Claude, what would you say is about the same question, general, how often are your mentors and mentees meeting? When are they available? What's kind of the general time commitment for your program?
Right, ours is a little less formal than Courtney's is, and Courtney has my wheels turning now about how we can make improvements in the next iteration of our academy. Time commitment's a hard one to nail down because every case is different, every mentee is different, right? And so some mentees need more support than others. Several are very independent, and so we don't really have a good feel for what that's going to be until we're doing the work. But what I can answer, which I hope will give a better idea, is in the Peer Academy, each of our mentors will support no more than 2 participants, no more than 2 mentees. And so that's the ask of our mentors in a module over this next 6+ months, because the cases will often go longer than the formal training portion of the program, although the cases are assigned during the program. And we ask our mentors to answer questions, review draft documents, provide practice tips and guidance that they see, and any weird things that come up in a case that aren't really accounted for in training. We try to do the best we can, and in most of our trainings have a section that's dedicated just to the crazy weird stuff that comes up in this area of law to be aware of. And even then we get stuff that these crazy law school fact patterns will pop up. And so our mentors help us parse through those. But that's the expectation of the mentor: 1 or 2 participants, answering questions, reviewing draft documents, providing practice tips. We ask that they meet at least once a month, but we're all adults here, right? And every lawyer has a different style and has a different workload. And most of our volunteers, whether we're talking mentors or participants, are from solo or small firms. And so we want to be mindful of that time and those expectations there. So we leave it up to our participants and mentors to schedule their own check-ins outside of our live monthly meetings. Then we have our live monthly meetings that our participants are required to attend, and our mentors are welcome to attend. They're invited to attend, and very often we'll get a different mix moving through those. We do have a participation agreement, which is signed by everybody, that they know this is what you're getting, but this is also what you're going to do to support. I've never had to use the participation agreement to get someone to do what they said they were going to, but I think folks take it a lot more seriously when that is a part of the formality of the program that we're talking about. And then we will meet with mentors separately. So I know that's not what you asked, Marissa, but we do check in individually with mentors to see how things are going. And when we assign cases to our participants, we use Legal Server as our case management system at CLS. We assign the case to both the mentor and the participant, although there's no expectation that the mentor be the attorney of record on the case.
Lauren, same question to you. How often do your mentors and mentees meet? What's around, would you say, your general time commitment, and how do you structure the availability of those meetings?
So, you know, in the same way that we have a variety of time commitments for pro bono work in general, we have that for the mentorship structure as well. So one of the options that we offer, and again, this is really specifically to the Act 2 group of volunteers, is, you know, you are welcome to come to our clinics. As Claude and Courtney and I were preparing for this, we had a conversation. We have, for whatever reason, found a lot of attorneys who are retired from the practice of family law will often say, I'm more than willing to advise, but not directly to clients. Like, I will talk to anyone. I will talk to your attorneys that work at Legal Aid. I will talk to volunteers, but I'm not going to meet directly with clients. And oftentimes that group is really interested in coming to what we call brief advice clinics, which are hosted almost every weekend, a couple hours on the weekend or a weekday evening, where clients drop in and get some advice, maybe some pro se assistance, some other help. And so we try to have mentors available at those clinics as well. And so for those attorneys that have agreed to that, it's really only that 2-hour commitment. They may sign up to come to, you know, 6, 7, 8 clinics a year. And so they end up committing to a longer or a more significant amount of time. But that commitment is pretty short. It's a 2-hour time commitment. And then we have the Act 2 attorneys who are agreeing to work with us on a more significant basis. You know, their hours are typically 10 hours a week. They probably spend half of that doing mentorship with attorneys who are taking those cases. So having conversations, reaching out to them. We do not have, we're even less formal than Claude and Courtney. We don't have like a requirement that you must meet over this time period. We have found that a lot of times, you know, if your process for bringing new volunteers in to do work is first you show them or you require them to watch a training and attend a CLE, then you connect them to their mentor. That first connection to the mentor is going to take more time. They're going to, you know, the mentor is going to need to spend more time with that attorney. But once they've gone through whatever that case is once, they tend to use the mentor less and less as they move on. And so we, you know, one of our big focuses is to try to make sure once someone has done one thing to get them to do that second thing, because all of that work that went into it with that mentor really pays off that second, third, fourth case that they take where they're using the mentor a lot less. So we don't have a requirement of how much the mentors need to meet with the clients because the mentors are working directly with us. We have a lot of interaction with those mentors to, you know, if they're raising an issue, if they've noticed something, you know, they can come talk to us, have that conversation. We also, for the Act 2 program, we specifically have Act 2 events. So we have the mentors get together and share with each other. We kind of host a variety of different events based on feedback that we received. So we've done some like lunch and learns where they get together and have presentations on issues. We've done happy hours where it's like primarily just a social event, but they can talk about things. We've done clinics where they all do a clinic together to learn about each other and learn more about the work of Legal Aid. So those have proved to be really helpful in just making sure that the mentors feel supported and connected, because for retired attorneys, they can often feel a bit isolated when it comes to their work just in the legal field in general. You know, they're working directly with us, but especially now, like post-pandemic, sometimes they're doing a lot of it remotely and they're not having a lot of connection to just others in the practice beyond the work with legal aid and the mentee that they might be talking with. And so we have found that those events are really helpful and really well attended. We have not yet tried to do like a mentor-mentee event where everyone gets together. That would be probably fun and interesting to try. But definitely those mentor events are important for that group.
If I could hop in, Lauren, and really just provide support for your statement right there. Our mentors need to be supported in and invested in as well, just as much as your volunteer attorneys and clients. We too also have a quarterly best practices mentor call, and that is where we discuss discuss updates in substantive law and how it influences or changes our practice or arguments that we make before the court, as well as how we would advise our mentees on utilizing those updates in the cases. But it also allows us to connect with each other and talk about how the mentor-mentee relationship is going and get feedback not only on how our program is structured to assist our pro bono attorneys, but also permits our mentors to get feedback on whether or not they feel supported and can let us know if there are any additional resources or trainings that they need as well in order to be successful mentors too.
That's a great point, Courtney. So we have a question that came in that I think is kind of talking about, we were talking a little bit about like who are mentors in each of your programs, but someone asked about working with volunteer mentors at solo and small firms, and how does that work with them having sufficient time to volunteer with the organization? So I'm just going to throw that one out there. And if anyone is working with solo small firms, of the three of you, what has your experience been with that?
I can kick off. My experience has been great. I work with a range from solos to big law firms to nonprofit volunteer mentor attorneys, and all have been great. We do sit down with each mentor and ask them as to their capacity. Like I said, we place about between 600 to 700 cases per year. And we want to make sure that no one gets burnt out. In addition to the fact that because they are a small firm or smaller solo firm, they may not take on as many cases as other entities such as our internal staff attorneys or our founding board member organizations who support us through by mentoring as well. So we sit down and talk to them about what their capacity is and then try to check in with them on a quarterly basis to see if we can keep continuing to place cases with them, or if we need to pause so we can let some of the cases finish out the court before we assign some additional cases on. So it's dependent upon their needs, and we just are sure to we ensure ourselves to be that we're in contact with them, so we know we're not overwhelming them.
Thanks.
Just to quickly jump in on that, I think I mentioned earlier, most of our volunteers in our pro bono program, whether peer academy or otherwise, are solo small firm practitioners. And what we have seen is, in fact, the opposite. It's the large firm attorneys that tend to have a harder time finding the time than the solo or small firm. I won't take a position on what the function of that is, but that is something that we've noticed at CLS. But it is all about just being real, right? And saying, this is what the ask is. Is this something you think you can do? And it's okay if the answer to that is no, or it's okay if you say, I can only take one mentee right now, or count me out this time, but I want to be in on the next round, or I can't mentor, but I can do a CLE training for you in this module. And so engaging in that way. We never want our volunteers, especially our mentors, to feel overwhelmed. We need them to keep coming back and supporting, because we can't do it ourselves.
Yeah, just seconding that. I think making sure that you're giving options to people and being upfront about what the expectations of those options are. So again, going back to the family law, most of the family law practitioners that we engage with are at solo and small, or were at solo and small firms before they retired. They choose the option of mentorship, but doing it on a smaller scale in that clinic model. And so just thinking about what that looks like and different options available to people, I think is key to help engage people in that mentorship program, even when they aren't able to give, pretty significant amount of hours.
Let's talk a little bit about training, a little bit more in depth. So what training do your mentors get, and how do you clearly define that relationship and the expectations? And included in this question, I'm going to throw one in that we got in the question in the Q&A, but in your trainings, are you including legal information only, or do you also include guidance about trauma-informed practices?
I'll jump in. We do not have specific training for our mentors, and that's something that we're talking about building and growing as the Academy continues to build and grow. We do support our mentors, we offer coaching, we connect our mentors to each other so that they can kind of mentor each other, and talk about what's going on. That's part of the reason why it's called the Peer Academy, because everybody in here is working together to try and move the mission forward. As far as substantive training goes, all of our mentors, all of our participants get all of the substantive training. With regarding trauma-informed training, we do. So every Peer Academy, the first set of training requires them to go through kind of a mission training for who is community legal services, how do we serve clients, who are our clients, right? And those types of details. Then we have a training on how to work with clients who are experiencing trauma and how to support them and other vulnerable clients in our work. And we also have kind of an administrative training on these are the tools that we use. Here's our case management system. If there's a particular software that we use in an academy, then that software training will be there as well. And that's to orient folks to this is how you access all of the materials, everything that we talk about, and can communicate with each other. So it's not just substantive legal training, although that is the bulk of it once you get past the first month. The first month really does focus on who are we as an organization, how we support you, our volunteers, both mentor and participant, and then the trauma-informed care piece of it.
Yeah, I would say very similar to Claude. So, the bulk of our trainings offered to all volunteers, mentors included, are substantive trainings. Most have some mentor aspect to them, but they're substantive in nature. And we have a resources page that people can go to and access those or attend the live trainings. But for the attorneys, the Act 2 attorneys who are in-house volunteers, we do like a full day orientation with them about our organization, the work of our organization, who we serve, how we serve them, the legal issues that we address. I would love to do a trauma-informed care piece. We have not incorporated that in, but I think that is definitely something that we should think about doing, because they are, they're working directly. Well, sometimes they are working directly with our clients. And so they have that full day orientation where they're learning about the work of the organization, and then the practical how to use our case management system. One thing with working with retired attorneys, we've seen a real there's a lot of variety in how comfortable people are in using different technology and doing that on their own. And so we provide a lot of administrative support for that. So while we do the training, we also offer a lot of administrative support in that technology piece, especially for the retired attorneys volunteering with us. And then finally, you know, because they're working more closely with substantive units, they then get some further, more specific training on the issues that they're going to be dealing with. Most of our in-house volunteers are experienced attorneys because they're retired, but not necessarily experienced in the areas in which they're practicing. So we have a federal prosecutor who now does a lot of immigration work. That was certainly not his area of practice when he was when he was in private practice or government practice, and now that's his area. So he's attended a lot of trainings to learn about that immigration practice and then serve as a mentor to others who are interested in doing the immigration work. So, that's really the training that we offer. It's for that more extensive, the people doing that more extensive mentorship piece.
Similar to Claude and Lauren, we have substantive training for our volunteers that our mentors can participate in. However, it is not a requirement. All of our professional mentors are veterans law advocates. So it is required that they have at least 1 year of active practice before the U.S. Court of Appeals for Veterans Claims. More often than not, I already know and I'm acquainted with the work of our mentors because this is a small practice area for us. And so we all know each other very well. So as long as they have 1 year of active practice, they do qualify to become a mentor with TVC. And as far as the support is concerned, I spoke about earlier, we have our quarterly best practices mentor call, but more often than not, our lines intersect when we're handling cases. So we interact on a pretty frequent basis just in our daily practice.
We have a question come in, and this was also a topic we were going to talk about, but do you have any recruitment tips? How do you recruit your mentors and get them involved? Courtney, why don't you start?
I will certainly say that I have been lucky enough to transition mentees into mentors. I spoke about earlier about how mentorship was contemplated as part of our structure when our organization was created. So we have 4 founding veteran service organizations. They're charter members, and we were able to leverage their expertise to create and expand our mentorship program. And so from there, we've been able to build it. And so a lot of our former mentees who have started their own veterans law practices have come back and volunteered with TVC in addition to our staff attorneys. We were fortunate enough to also turn some of our mentees into TVC staff. So they are working with us even today. So recruitment has not really been an issue just yet. I hope it never becomes an issue, but it is certainly something for us to think about how we recruit. We just have been lucky enough to have people come back to us and want to expand their pro bono engagement with TVC into mentorship.
I'll say that this was an area where we struggled a lot when it came to the mentorship program. So mentorship was something, as I mentioned, it was always something we wanted to engage volunteers in over the years. We heard from people that they wanted to be mentors, and we just did not have a great way of kind of bringing those people together with other volunteers. We didn't have enough structure around the program. And so it was hard to recruit for it because we couldn't really articulate what it was, and so that was, it was something that we struggled with as an organization, trying to figure out the best way to recruit mentors, connect them to their mentees, and actually ensure success in that work, because, you know, once you connect them, how involved are you in that connection, and what if it's not working out, and who tells you it's not working out, and what if the mentee is expecting too much and it's hard on the mentor. And so all those things that we just didn't have like great answers to, I think that really impacted our ability to recruit mentors. I think with all things pro bono, the more clear you can be about what you're asking someone to do, the better success you're going to have. And, you can't always, like Claude said, you can't always predict the amount of time something is going to take, but I think still saying this is the parameter, and if things go outside of this parameter, get us involved and we can help you figure out what to do. I think that's just always so important when you're doing recruiting. And so for us, having that Act 2 structure really helped us articulate what it was that we were asking someone to do. It's giving more time to legal aid in that in-house volunteer program. And within that, you will provide mentorship to other volunteers who are working in this area, or doing that more traditional, brief advice clinic setting where you're not talking to the clients, but you're giving advice to the volunteers who are going to talk to the clients, so it was pretty clear what we were asking people to do. And I think that was a huge help. The other thing I would say is get the people who are serving as mentors to be the ones to help you with recruiting. So again, when we're doing that, mentorship, the Act 2 group getting together, having the people who have done the in-house work talk about their experience and what they enjoyed about it and what they were able to do and how it wasn't nearly as scary as everyone thinks it is really our best way of recruiting. People believe them more than they believe me for obvious reasons. They're the ones that know what the experience is really like. So I think that is another key piece. That's also why we engage the mentors so much in our CLEs and substantive trainings, not so much to recruit mentors, but just to recruit volunteers, to say, that this is a person that worked outside of our organization and still has this knowledge, this experience, and encourages you to do this as well. So that would be my tip on recruiting. It's a question we're always asking: how do we get more people involved in pro bono, whether it's mentorship or taking cases or coming to clinics or whatever. But I think the more precise you can be, and the more you can get people who have done the work to participate in the recruitment, the better success you'll have.
I'll just quickly, everything that Courtney and Lauren said, we advertise through email, our newsletter, social media, press releases, word of mouth, etc. Any new attorneys that come on to volunteer with us, we ask them, what do you want to do? How do you want to volunteer? And give them a list of options, whether it's mentoring, updating content, providing brief services or extended representation, training, co-counseling, etc. And so that way we start with a list of attorneys to say, okay, they want a mentor, so we're gonna start there when it comes time to make the ask. But honestly, our most effective recruitment method is reaching out to individuals who we know are effective and asking if they'd be willing to. It's not the most efficient, and you do run the risk of kind of going back to the same well of attorneys every time. But one of the core principles of the Peer Academy program specifically is that there's an ask that once a participant completes the program, that they'll take a few more cases within a year from us. And then once they've completed that, we ask them to come back and be mentors in future academies. So we've not been running the academy long enough to see that in full practice yet, but I can say we've had several participants come back as mentors already. So
Great. So I'm going to go to a couple of questions really quick because we have a bunch and we only have a couple minutes left. Claude, there's a specific question for you. You mentioned that your mentees and pro bono attorneys have access to the case management system. How does that work? And do the mentees and pro bono attorneys use that as their primary record of the case, or is it in addition to a record or file kept within their own office or practice?
It's a great question, and one that we've made a transition over the last several years, an intentional transition that all of our pro bono attorneys have login access to legal server so that they can access their case files. The expectation is that they enter their notes, they enter their time, they upload any documents that are completed directly into the file. If they choose to keep their own separate case file, that's their choice. We're not gonna stop that from happening. Where this comes in really helpful with the mentor model is that both parties can see all of the documents in real time. And our staff, if a client mails something into one of our offices and our staff can upload it, it's already there. So there's not worrying about, did I send an email? Did it get lost in the shuffle? And mentors can track what their mentees are doing as they move through the case file. We have found because of that, we are getting more timely feedback, more timely documents, case closure summaries, that kind of stuff as well. Just requiring that it all be in there. Not every one of our attorneys does it, although we do encourage it. And those that don't, we work out an individual plan to determine how are we going to be able to track this information. But it's really, really lifted a major burden on our coordinators who previously would be sending out like a PDF to be filled out and then sent back in and then scanned and put in the file and then notes typed in to be able to close the file, just really not efficient at all. Now the attorney uses it as their dashboard. We also use Legal Server to house some of our trainings, our manuals, all that kind of stuff. And we use Legal Server for document assembly and estate planning for advanced directives. So we're trying to make it a place that folks want to be so that they use it, which makes our lives a lot easier.
Do any of your mentors experience difficulties with getting pro bono volunteers to get work done, especially if there's not a set deadline? Any ideas on dealing with that issue? This is for any of the three of you, if you have experienced this.
I'll be real quick on this one. That's not a problem we see in the academy so much because we have our monthly meetings, our monthly check-ins, and we're very clear to make it known, like between this meeting and the next meeting, this is what's expected of you. Do your one clinic, complete your training, check in with your mentor, right? And then they hear me again later. If you haven't done it yet, it's time to do it, right? So there's all those check-ins, and having those check-ins has helped us really make sure that the deadline problem hasn't been an issue. We do see it in other relationships, just not in the peer academy, and I don't really have a good answer beyond that.
I agree with Claude. I don't have that as much of that issue with our CABC practice. It is helpful because we have to abide by the court's rules of practice and procedure. So once you enter an appearance, you are beholden to the court to make sure you meet those deadlines. However, that doesn't necessarily translate over into our discharge upgrade program where there are no deadlines. And so we are experiencing some issues with our volunteers not being timely in submitting their briefs for review. So part of that is formalizing a structure where we do constant check-ins, probably a little bit more than we do with our CABC program. But ultimately, at the end of the day, we do have to make a judgment call because we are serving a population who is in need. And if the work is not getting done, we have to pull it back in-house and do it ourselves and or reassign it. And especially for discharge upgrades, because typically once we submit the brief to the review boards, on average, we're waiting 1 to 3 years for a response. So we don't want to extend it any longer than it needs to be. So ideally, we would like to get it done within ideally 60 days of placement, but sometimes it takes longer. There are mitigating factors, but if we can get it in within 6 months, that's great. But anything longer, then we're looking at taking back the case quite possibly and reassigning it. So like Claude, I don't have a good answer just yet as to how we tackle the ones where there are no deadlines outside of really being a gnat and annoying our volunteers and again, making that hard judgment call once we get to the end of the line.
All right, so we are out of time, but I'm going to ask just one quick final question of everyone. So would each of you just tell us, what are your biggest takeaways that you would want someone to know who is, anyone who's starting a mentorship program or thinking about it, what would be sort of your biggest piece of advice or your biggest takeaway as someone's developing that? I'm going to start with Lauren.
Sure, I feel like I've already said it, but be clear in your ask to the mentor. What are you asking them to do? When are you asking them to do it? So clear in your ask and expectations with the mentor, I think is the best way to approach the program and get it started. And even when you aren't totally sure exactly what the program will look like, have at least some preliminary guidelines as to what that ask is going to look like for the volunteers, for the mentors.
Thanks. Claude, what about you?
Set those expectations, set them early, set them often. We include them in our participation agreement and our application for the program and our marketing for the program. And then as we continue to move through, set those expectations. Lawyers don't read, we know that. And so sometimes you got to get it 15 times before it sticks. Demonstrate what it is you're asking. Right? Be really clear about this is what we're asking you to do and this is what it looks like. And then I would say start, if you're just getting started, start with some trusted mentors, some trusted volunteers and ask them, right? I mean, I get to say that the Peer Academy is built by pro bono attorneys for pro bono attorneys because it is. We put together a panel of pro bono attorneys to help us design it, right? And to help us build something that was going to work for our volunteers. And their trust was really, really helpful. And our trust in them was really, really helpful for us to be able to build a meaningful program that's actually doing what we want it to do.
Thank you. Courtney.
I think I'm going to be a broken record. I have that a structured mentor program is key. It is so important. Develop an SOP. And I think that gets to what Claude was saying, that sets out your expectations that you have of your mentor. It helps you develop trust between not only the organization and the mentor, but also the mentor and the volunteer who's taking on these cases as well. So start off with some outline, some structure where everybody is in agreement as to what the commitment is for the mentor attorneys. I would also add that, and I think I said this earlier, celebrate your mentors, celebrate their successes just as much as you celebrate the wins that you get in cases and the success of your volunteer attorneys, because underpinning that success are your mentors who put in the time with them. So please be sure to celebrate them, whether that is in a newsletter, whether that is in a Mentor of the Month feature within your newsletter. If you have an end of the year gala, shout out your mentors, speak about their investment into your program. And I think that ultimately will lead to the retention of your mentors, but then also the retention of your volunteers and the recruitment of your volunteers, and a very successful and stable pro bono program.
Well, thank you so much to our three panelists for all of your expertise and all of the work that you're doing. Thanks for all of our attendees for joining us. I did have a couple of requests for the three of you. If there are any documents or templates that you can share that we can mail out to attendees, there seemed to be quite a bit of interest in that. So if you have anything, please send it to me and I will make sure it gets out. We will be sending a recording of this around to all of our attendees. And if you all have any questions any further questions for our panelists, please just email me. I will make sure my email's in the email about the recording, and feel free to email me with any questions. But thanks again, everyone, for joining us and for sticking with us since we went a little bit over. Sorry about that, but this is a topic we could probably talk for another hour about, I bet. But Thanks again for everyone joining us, and enjoy the rest of your week.
Thanks, everyone.
Everyone take care.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. All right.